In 2016, Conor McGregor was the most famous athlete on the planet. Not the most famous fighter, the most famous athlete. 2 years later, he was standing in a Brooklyn parking garage, surrounded by his crew, hurling a metal dolly through a bus window, injuring fighters he didn't even have a beef with, on camera, in front of the whole world. And here's the part that should disturb you. The internet didn't condemn it. Half of them called it a power move. Here's what nobody wants to ask out loud. Was Conor McGregor destroyed by success? Or did success just reveal who he always was? That question doesn't have a clean answer. And by the end of this, it's going to bother you more than it does right now. Dublin, Ireland, 2006. Conor McGregor is a plumber's apprentice, training in a gym that smells like rubber mats and broken ambition. He's 18. He has nothing except a voice in his head that most people in his position learn to quiet down. He doesn't quiet it down. By 2013, he's in the UFC. By 2015, he's knocking out Jose Aldo, the featherweight champion, in 13 seconds. 13. The fastest finish in UFC title history. He becomes the first fighter to hold 2 UFC belts simultaneously. He generates over 1 million pay-per-view buys almost every time he fights. He launches a whiskey brand. He buys his mother a house. He tells the world, repeatedly and loudly, that he's going to do all of this, and then he does it. That's the part people forget. He wasn't just talking, he was right. So where does a story like that go wrong? The architecture of belief. The thing about Conor McGregor is that his psychological model was actually sophisticated. He didn't just say, "I'm the best." That's easy. Anybody can say that. What he did was construct a reality so convincing that his opponents started living inside it before the fight even began. Sports psychologists have a name for this. It's called persuasion. You shape the battlefield before the battle starts. He called his shots, then he landed them. He said he'd knock out Aldo in 1 round. He did it in 13 seconds. He said he'd submit Chad Mendes. He did. He said he'd stop Eddie Alvarez. He did that too. And here's where it gets complicated. Because when you win like that, repeatedly, publicly, loudly, something starts to happen inside the feedback loop. The line between the character you perform and the person you actually are begins to dissolve. By 2017, Conor McGregor wasn't playing a confident fighter anymore. He might have actually believed he was untouchable. And untouchable people make very specific kinds of mistakes. The Mayweather Detour. The boxing match with Floyd Mayweather should have been a red flag. Not because McGregor lost. He was always going to lose. He was a UFC fighter fighting the greatest defensive boxer of his generation. Nobody sane expected him to win. The red flag was what the fight meant. McGregor made approximately $100 million that night. One night for losing. Think about what that does to a person's relationship with consequence. You lose, and you make more money than most people will see in 10 lifetimes. What does failure mean after that? What does discipline mean? What does training camp mean? His corner stopped the fight in the 10th round, and Conor smiled. He smiled. That image, that grinning man who just lost in front of the world and made $100 million, that image tells you something. Whether it tells you he's free or whether it tells you he's already gone somewhere you can't follow, depends on how you look at it. Let me stop here for a second, because everything I've told you so far, the rise, the belts, the money, the psychology, that's the version of this story that's already been told 100 times. What I actually want to talk about is the question underneath all of it. What happens to a human being when the world decides they're a symbol? The Khabib Collapse, October 2018, Las Vegas. McGregor vs. Khabib Nurmagomedov. For context, McGregor hadn't won a UFC fight in 2 years. He'd had a child. He'd been involved in a brawl where he threw a hand truck through a bus window and was charged with assault. He took a plea deal, community service, a fine. He walked into that fight carrying all of that, and Khabib walked into that fight carrying something else entirely. A 26-0 record, a wrestling pedigree that looked less like fighting and more like physics, and a very specific kind of rage, the kind that doesn't perform. McGregor got submitted in the 4th round, strangled, helpless, and then, immediately after, before the cameras had even settled, Khabib leapt over the cage and attacked McGregor's corner. His own teammates jumped into the crowd. There was a full brawl in the arena. Here's what's strange. In the public memory, Conor McGregor is often blamed for the chaos of that night, even though he was the one on the ground when it started. That tells you something about how his reputation had shifted. He had become, in the public mind, the author of any disorder that touched him. Whether that's fair is a different question. Whether it's true is another one entirely. The personal allegations. This is the part of the documentary that a lot of people skip past because it's uncomfortable, and we're not going to skip it. In 2018, a woman in Ireland made a rape allegation against McGregor. He was never charged. He denied it. The case was investigated and closed by Irish police. In 2019, another allegation emerged. Again, no charges filed. In 2023, a civil lawsuit was filed in the United States. A woman alleged assault at an NBA Finals event in Miami in 2018. McGregor denied it. Now, how do you hold all of that? Because if you believe him, these are a pattern of false accusations against a wealthy, famous target. That happens. It's documented. It's real. And if you don't believe him, or if you hold doubt instead of certainty in either direction, then you're sitting with something much harder. You're sitting with the possibility that the mythology we built around this man was built on something unstable. The court will decide the civil case. The public already decided something. They just can't agree on what. You've been watching this thinking about Conor McGregor, but I want you to think for a second about what you were rooting for when you were rooting for him. Was it him, or was it the idea of him? The idea that you can come from nothing, say exactly what you think, refuse to be small, and win. Because if it was the idea, and I think for most of us it was the idea, then his fall doesn't just belong to him. It belongs to the story we needed him to tell. July 2021, McGregor vs. Dustin Poirier, third fight. His leg snaps in the first round. A compound fracture, live, on camera. He sat on the canvas, leg bent the wrong direction, and he kept talking, pointing, promising things. He came back 18 months later, fought Michael Chandler on the Ultimate Fighter coaching show. The actual fight, which was supposed to happen in 2024, kept getting delayed. Injury, more delays. He's now, as of this year, without a UFC win since 2020. The sport has evolved around him. The fighters who came up studying him have now surpassed him in almost every measurable way, and yet he still talks like the belt is already his. Which brings us back to the original question. Is that delusion? Is that damage? Or is that the same voice that got him here in the first place? Still running, unable to stop, long after the conditions that made it work have disappeared. Here's what we know. Conor McGregor changed the economics of combat sports. That's not an opinion, it's financial record. He proved that personality could be worth more than championships, that the right story, told loudly enough, could rewrite what sport even means. Here's what we don't know. We don't know what's true about the allegations. We don't know if the man on the canvas in 2021, still pointing and threatening, was showing us courage or denial. We don't know if he'll fight again and surprise everyone. People have come back from further. And we don't know, and this is the one that should stay with you, we don't know at what point a person becomes unable to separate themselves from the myth they created. Because some people are destroyed by failure. But Conor McGregor might be something rarer and stranger. A person being slowly dismantled by the success of a version of himself that no longer exists. Was he the greatest self-promoter in sports history? Probably. Was he a great fighter? Undeniably, for a window of time. Was he a good man? That question is still open. And people who tell you otherwise, in either direction, are selling you something. If this made you think differently about something you thought you already understood, that's the whole point. Drop your take in the comments. I read them. Subscribe if you want more stories told this way. And share this with whoever you think needs to sit with these questions. Because the comfortable version of this story already exists. You didn't come here for that.